Welcome, everybody. We are kicking off this live session, and it is H-1B results season. I've had a lot of great news from friends. I've had a lot of heartbreak news from friends, and we're going to hear about your guys' stories today as well. But H-1B season brings a lot of stress and confusion, especially in the international community. International students trying to stay longer, professionals trying to come abroad to America to work. And our conversation today is going to be what to do if you've been picked, what to do if you haven't been picked, and viable alternatives, ones that you've maybe even never heard of before, on how to continue to work here in North America and build a career, build a pathway of immigration and life abroad. And so we're going to help you out in this conversation today. I'm Rob with Chai and Coaching. We help international students and professionals from around the world who are coming to America. I worked in India for 8 years and have traveled all over the world, and we love helping you guys find success on your journeys. And we've got my friend Marc here, who's our guest. So Marc, please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Robert. Marc Pavlopoulos, founder of Syndesis. We're a Canadian corporation that employs people who live in Canada and work remotely for U.S. companies. And we have permission to sponsor Canadian work visas. So we have a unique solution we'll be diving into more later in Rob's show.
Yeah. And Marc, tell us what's kind of your background as well. You've had kind of feet in a couple different countries. So tell us a little bit about your journey as well as our friends tune in.
Yeah, that also helps frame things. So for me, U.S. citizen, 20 plus years in Silicon Valley, worked for 7 VC-backed startups, always doing sales, business development partnerships. Also lived in Canada, went there twice. Went there once as a student, got an MBA from their top business school. So I was on a student visa for 2 years, finished, right back to Silicon Valley because that was home. To my surprise, because life's always full of surprises, boomeranged to Toronto, lived there for 3 years on work visas, worked in venture capital and for a Canadian tech startup, then came back home. So it's kind of I think, Robert, as you share your background of having time spent in India and how that's shaped you and the company you have, living in Canada has done the same for me. I come from the perspective of an American citizen who right now I live in New York, but spent half a decade in Canada, got to understand their employment culture, their immigration system, understood people who want to move back and forth, but in this tech sector in both countries. Happy to share my experience and a unique solution with the audience.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited. I think every time we talk about the topics we're sharing today, most of my friends are like, why haven't I heard this before? Why does nobody teach us this? You know, the colleges aren't going to teach you this. The coaching centers in your home country aren't going to teach you this. And it's not secrets. It's just knowledge that people don't find out until usually it's too late. So we're going to help prepare you guys to make your plan, get the visas you want, build the life and the careers abroad. And that's what we're going to be breaking down today. So stay tuned. We're going to be doing some live Q&A as well at the end. But first, I'm tuning in here from Dallas, Texas. Marc, where are you at today?
In New York, right in Manhattan, okay. In my office.
Nice. So in New York, but I know you pop across the border and you're in Canada a lot, in Toronto and other places. So friends, where are you guys watching from? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to see where our amazing audience is tuning in from. I've been on the road a lot the last several weeks for work in the UK, across America. So it's nice to be home. But yeah, where are you guys watching from today? Please share in the comments. Marc, is it still winter there in New York, or is spring actually on the horizon for you guys?
It was in the 30s last night.
Okay.
Or colder, maybe with the wind chill. So this might be the last week or two of winter, and then hopefully it'll be done. Okay.
Nice. So yeah, friends, or if you're watching the replay later, tell us where you're watching from. But we're going to jump in here. We've got the results are in. I'm going to share what at least I've learned, so the lottery has been full. They've got about a max cap about 85,000 spots, 65,000 in the standard cap, 20,000 extra for the advanced degree. So, if you're doing master's, PhD, you get a special kind of opportunity for that group. And this year, the selection rate actually improved. It's about 35%. So I know in previous years, it was maybe like 20, 25%. So it bumped up to 35% this year, which is encouraging. There was about, they said 442,000, about 400 lakh applicants, similar to the numbers about 2 years ago as well. But because of that, it said the number of valid registrations actually kind of declined from previous years. So there's a decrease in total registrations. I think last year there was a huge amount, over 700, maybe 800,000. But one of the big changes that the USCIS has been implementing is what they call the beneficiary-centric selection. So, which is addressing a lot of the lottery concerns for integrity, which means trying to reduce fraud, cheating, because especially in the past couple of years, there was spots where people did multiple sponsorships. They would have multiple companies sponsoring their visas, getting multiple chances, and then some people were picked multiple times. I heard a story of some people who had like a dozen H-1Bs for one person, but then a lot of people who don't get to get it. So it wasn't really fair. There was people that were definitely scamming the system, consultancies kind of working loopholes and really kind of messing over people who were trying to do it the right, legit way. So they really cracked down. Now they've eliminated multiple entries to enhance in fairness, reduce fraud. So just one entry per person, which kind of balances out those numbers. So again, the selection rate rose from previous years, which is exciting. And other changes is higher fees. So it actually cost more for the company. I think it was about $250 per beneficiary to apply for the lottery. And then, people who've been picked, the beneficiary should be selected starting April 1st. They can file and they have 90 days to file the paperwork if you've been selected in the H-1B. So make sure that if you've been selected, congratulations, but make sure your company files within, 90 days so you don't miss out on that opportunity for this fiscal year 2026 H-1B. Mark, anything else from this year's lottery that you saw or stood out to you?
Yeah, I was been waiting to hear those numbers. So like you said, over 400,000. And then you're still shooting for 85,000 slots. So anytime I hear those numbers, Robert, all my mind goes to is I start calculating the ratio. And then I'm thinking how many hundreds of thousands of people are staring at their computer screen saying, I really needed this. I'm down. My OPT is expiring. This was my last shot. The number of disappointed people and the numbers you shared is in the hundreds of thousands. This is significant.
Yeah. I mean, over 300,000 people applied and did not get it. And so the question is, what do they do? And that's what we're going to share in just a few minutes is what you need to do if you didn't get picked. So yeah, we'd love to know, you guys who are tuning in, if you filed this year, let us know. And if you got selected, let's celebrate. So we'd love to hear the feedback of our friends tuning in today. If you filed, if you've been selected. But another kind of question is, just because you got selected doesn't mean you're going to get approved. Rejections actually can still happen with an H-1B. So yeah, Mark, tell us a little bit, what does it mean that someone's selected, but maybe they haven't gotten an approval email yet?
Yeah. So in that situation, like I'm trying to picture someone saying I got selected, and I was like, great. That's a happy occasion. And then, not to be the pessimist, but immigration is a reality focused world. You can't be optimistic or pessimistic. You have to deal with the facts. When I see the enforcement, when you see everyone on your show, anyone who's in the U.S., anyone who's trying to be in the U.S., anyone who's is thinking about immigration, you just have to turn into the news. Current U.S. presidency and the current U.S. administration is not making it easy for immigrants. That was never the focus. You could see the exact opposite. So if you got selected, I don't think, I think I saw a headline this morning about more student visas being rejected, no explanation. I think it's time to have a quiet celebration, do everything you have to do with your US immigration lawyer, but realize that things got tougher. And you need to think of, what if things don't go my way? What if I get an RFE? What if there's a rejection? What if something in my application makes it become, that's not of my fault, that makes me not get approved? What did you need to do? What should you do now to be ready?
Yeah. And I even noticed in some of the stats that, unfortunately, while the percentage of approvals got increased this year, which is great, the number of rejections have also increased compared to previous years. Part of it is due to the different administration. So that is a factor. Getting picked does not mean a guaranteed visa. There is more stringent reviewing, background paperwork, all those things. And so, yeah, it still might not be approved. So we need to be careful about that. All right. So, Mark,
Great.
plan B, you don't get picked. You're one of those 300,000 people who are hoping for that, to convert from F1 OPT or just to stay longer, but yeah, not picked. So what are some of the popular alternatives that people can consider to still stick around in North America?
Yeah, my goal is just to make sure that all the numbers in math are completely.
Yeah, and I think we can walk through some of them, the other ones that come up, because there are a few, and you've run through some of them on your show. So I can cover the Canadian option. Happy to do so, but I think there's a few others that you've done deep dives on. We can walk through them one by one. As you share them, I can give you just a feedback or an opinion on them, because they're all valid. It always comes down to what's best for the person.
Yeah. One of them is day one CPT. So universities. So these are a couple dozen colleges across America, where as soon as you start studying there, you can also be eligible for day one CPT qualification. Most universities, you have to complete 2 semesters before you can start working. But a day one CPT university allows that work eligibility to continue. You can keep a job going, to keep an internship going, still make some money, and pursuing an alternative degree. They are legal. There are some good ones. I've had friends who have had good experiences upgrading, working, staying in America. Day one CPT is not for everybody. There are some potential scams out there as well, so be careful. We've got some great videos on our channel about day one CPT. But yeah, Mark, your friends, have any of them experienced day one CPT before?
Yeah, whenever I hear that option, I think, again, as we mentioned, you've had people on your show. I know some people who run a very good information on what's out there. As long as you're with a reputable solution. I mean, my take as an American citizen is, and I completely understand this, do what you need to do to stay in the US. If you can make that work, if your employer's fine, if you're not running yourself into big debt, taking on some more school, if you can do it reasonably and this works, you satisfy your employer, the education is something pertinent to your future, and it's not, again, not too ruinous with debt. If you can make that work, we try and make that work.
Yeah. Sadly, another realistic alternative is just going back home. When you come on a student visa, it is a non-immigrant visa. Visa officers looking for intent to return home. So there always has to be the possibility of going home. Whether that's really your goal or not, that can happen. America, Canada are not guarantees. Jobs and visas are not guarantees. And so you have to have that reality. And hopefully you can use that degree, that experience, and apply it to upgrading yourself back in your home country, maybe later on to pivot somewhere else in the world or come back in the future. But going back home is a real thing to consider. And a lot of my friends have gone back home and enjoy life back in their home countries with family, working there. And that is also a wonderful, viable alternative. America is not the perfect place for everyone. And if, hopefully, there are other great places around the world where you can make a life and career too. But I know some people will be disappointed because that's maybe not their, at least short-term plan, is to go back home.
true. And this one seems there's a whole lot to unpack here, Robert, because on this one, like you and I have had this discussion. We all know that salaries now, for example, in India, 6 figures, no problem. It's not it is no longer an issue to say, hey, if I go home, will I take a massive salary cut? Probably not. Opportunities, if you look at the unicorns, if you look at the activity in Indian venture capital of all the new companies being built, or the US companies that have significant operations there, you can have you can have a great career. The personal part comes to when you start peeling the onion, it goes down to like what's most important to you as a person. If you look at, and there's also you as a person, and then there's a couple, if you happen to be talking about if you're a situation where there's one person on H-1B and their partner, those are very different from what we've learned over the years. So if you're a person, I've met people who've, as have you, who are like, America's the dream. It's the dream. The person worked hard enough to get here. They what you know from the, you work with students, you know the stories of how hard someone has worked to get here. You see the sacrifices, the family sacrifices, all that's been done. The person's here, and then someone says, "I'm sorry, because of a lottery." Not because you're not an amazing person, but because of a lottery, you will no longer be able to be in the US. When I've sat down with people in that situation, we're having a conversation. And if I hear like, but America was my dream, that's the person who's reluctant to go home. And my conversation with them would be, look, if there is an option for you, you go to Canada. You keep your US job, you keep making the good money. That's going to continue. But look at it as a longer term strategy. You're anchored in North America. You're remotely working for a US company. You're in time zone. You're making great wages. You still can see your team and work with them. Stretch that out then. 2-3 years, you get Canadian permanent residence. 5 years, you're holding a passport. You're now holding a passport of a North American country that's not the US. Gives you all kinds of global privilege, allows you to pop back into the US, work on a TN visa. If you so desire, you can do that. You have a way back into the US. For the people, as you know, you've had people who say like, that was a fun ride in the US. I can go home. I can be fine. I can have my career there. I have heard that conversation a few times from a couple people that we moved to Canada, because the next part of the conversation, interestingly, is I was okay to move back to India, but my wife insisted we look at the Canadian option. And I'm now in Toronto, Ottawa, Vancouver, because as a family discussion, the question came up of where should we be as a family? And then that's where I've heard Indian women speak up and say, the Canadian option gives me a work visa, open work visa. I can work anywhere. I am no H4 nonsense like in the US. I can have my career, but if we were to go home as a couple back to India, it would be more challenging, is what I heard. It would be more challenging work-wise to have an amazing career versus they looked and said, Canada allows this. Both of us can work. Both of us can build our dreams. That's where I saw a bit of a disparity of when we asked the question, who are we talking to in the conversation? Is it the couple or is it just the man saying, hey, here's my situation? That's something we picked up where going home sometimes isn't always the best for a family. There's other considerations.
Yeah, a lot of factors to consider. A couple other plan Bs that have really helped people out that you might not be aware of. One is the H-1B capped exempt, which means there are H-1B visas, but that don't fall under the lottery, where you have a 25 to 30 or 35% chance, as this year. And the capped exempt are dependent on other roles. So if you are working at a university, a nonprofit, there's other types of job roles that qualify. And you can just do a quick Google, capped exempt H-1Bs, and it'll tell you all the options. And if you're in a field, a job or career that qualifies, then go straight for that, because that shortcuts the lottery and you can apply, get an H-1B anytime through that. And it's a beautiful thing. So that's a more secure option to go the capped exempt. And then there's two other specialty work visas, the O1 and the EB1, kind of talent or extraordinary visas. They also help fast track the green card process towards citizenship. And these are things that you can be working towards in your home country, your master's here. You don't have to be a rocket scientist or a celebrity or, publish a dozen papers. Each of them has different criteria. And it's much more achievable than you think. It just takes the hard work and future planning. We've got videos on how to get O1, how to get EB1 on our channel. And we'll be sharing a resource later as a prize that is going to help you understand those as well. But yeah, Mark, when people hear, I didn't get H-1B, should I go for O1, EB1? What does that conversation look like?
We always encourage them, try your US options. Try them. Talk to is there support required from your company? What does the US immigration lawyer you're working with say? Always try those options. Like you said, O1 extraordinary talent visa. I know people who've qualified for it. What I've also known is I always hear and you I think you covered this on your show. There's the cautionary note. It's never a good approach to go to your US immigration lawyer and say, qualify me for that O1. What they're going to say back is, there is criteria. It could involve you speaking at conferences. It could involve you demonstrating your knowledge. There's a whole bunch of things you would do to get that. The worker actually has to do all those things, but there's plenty of people on your show who are that extraordinary, who would fit for that visa. That's what they should always try that option first. As you and I have discussed before, it's like you do all those US options. The whole idea here is choices. Try them all, but be clear when your immigration professional in the US comes back and says, no, that won't work. I'm sorry, you're 1 or 2 years away from the O1. As they map options out for you, then you have this all mapped out. Everyone has their own personal spreadsheet or evaluation system. There's sometimes a point where you realize one of those may work, cool, and they may not. And then as you said, you have to have your last minute options. You have to have them all arrayed out in front of you to know what's possible.
Yeah, definitely. And so with those, you definitely need to plan ahead. It's not, oh shoot, my visa runs out in 3 months, what I'm going to do. That's either where maybe you have to go home or do day one CPT. But if you have a semester, a year in advance to plan ahead, that's enough runway to really, consider and go for an O1, EB1. The more advanced time and prep, getting a good immigration attorney, it's much more viable than you think. So, friends, we want to hear from you. Our chai question in this video is, what visa are you pursuing right now? Tell us in the comments. Is it a student visa, F1, M1, J1? Is it a work visa, H-1B, L1? Is it a spouse visa like an F2, H4? A lot of different visas out there, immigrant, non-immigrant. Please tell us in the comments. Friends watching the replay as well, what visa are you going for? We probably have a different video on the channel for that to help you out. So yeah, let us know. And also, we've got a lot of the other great resources on social media. We've shared some links, how to connect with Marc at Syndesis. And then again, we'd love to connect on Instagram, LinkedIn. Make sure you guys get our email newsletter that we send out each week with other great tips, resources, updates about when these live events are going to happen. So make sure you're connected to all of those things in the chat and the video description. Okay, now plan A is getting the H-1B. Plan B, we just covered those. Now there's a plan C. Plan C stands for Plan Canada. So Marc, how is Plan C an option? And again, most people have never heard of this, but are like, whoa, why didn't I know this? So give some enlightenment about a wonderful Plan C that people should really consider and could make their day after a discouraging non-lottery pick.
Yeah, as you said, it's the Canada option. It's why the immigration chats, different groups have been a part of. Canada's always thrown out there as an option. But what I've noticed is it's thrown out there as an option of people. It's not moving country to country. Sometimes it's target country. Like, do I come to the US or Canada or UK or Australia? It's meant in those terms. Or someone saying, oh, I didn't. The other one we see people say is, well, yes, Marc, express entry Canada. Everyone knows about that. It's an old program. It's been there forever. You apply to it. The goal is you have enough points. You get in. Your idea is you go in there, you get into Canada, and then you go look for a job. So Canada's done a great job of saying, there's a way to immigrate to Canada. Express entry. What Canada hasn't done a good job of, and because it's unusual, is the work visa option, which requires you to have a job when you come to Canada. The work visa program is called Global Talent Stream. That's what Syndesis works with. The reason, Robert, no one hears about this is it is such a niche idea where you're basically going to someone saying, to qualify for this work visa, you have to have a job, versus express entry is like, no, that's the way into the country. When you get in, you'll get your job. Global Talent Stream, the program was put in place by the Canadian government in 2017. The parameters of the program are, there is a significant STEM shortage of tech workers, hardware and software in Canada. Let's put a work visa program in place to get them in. It is strictly based on merit. It is not about, it's not about towards points. It does not have a category for anything towards permanent residence. It's, here's a work visa. You have a job in Canada. Canada needs you. You qualify for the work visa. You're into the country. So that's where it's unusual, is it requires you to have a Canadian job. And that's where most people say, well, wait a minute, I'm working in the US, Robert. I'm watching your show. I've been watching. Lottery delivered bad news. I did express entry. The points are too high. I'm not going to get in. This is the other way of, Syndesis is a Canadian corporation. Syndesis is a Canadian corporation since 2014. Syndesis has employed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Canadians who work remotely for American companies. We have permission from the Canadian government to sponsor work visas. When we sponsor your work visa, you're coming in with a job. It's separate from express entry. It has nothing to do with express entry. It's a way to get to Canada, but the requirement is you have a job. In the case of people listening, they would have a US job and they're like, but my job's about to be taken away from me because of the OPT expiring. I'm about to have to leave the country and go. And this is where there's this unique solution that Syndesis offers, which is, okay, we'll sponsor your work visa. And what it basically comes down to is same job, same US boss, same time zone. It's the same in a way. You're working, for the same company. You're doing the same work. You're just remote in Canada now. That's the option. Like you said, people will read Global Talent Stream and say, oh, I need a job for that. So a Canadian company sponsoring my job. I'm working in the US. The twist in this unique solution is going to a company like Syndesis and saying, oh, wait, you're going to employ me in Canada with this, with a tech job. And we're like, yeah, it's what you've been doing in the US.
Yeah. So you shared kind of the eligibility. All you really need to do is have a job in America that a company is willing to allow you to work remotely with. But then how does that process work? How does that get done? And then what's the timeline? How long does that take?
Yeah. So let's qualifying is the most important thing. So qualifying, it's just like with the H-1B lottery. You want to know, like, am I in or am I out? For Canada, for this Global Talent Stream, it's a tech job or the manager of a tech job. So someone's like, comes to us like, I'm a CTO, I'm a VP engineering, I'm leading a team. We're like, you're fine. So it's a tech job, either significant work experience or a tech degree, a STEM degree. It is also, you have to have 100%, it's 100% remote. You cannot be going, people ask, oh, can I fly to the US every month? Absolutely not. You cannot be flying to the US. You will be stopped by USCIS at the border and you say, I'm going to come in and work. They're going to be like, actually, you're not. We can see here OPT expired. We have your entire record here. This becomes a permanent one-way move to Canada. And then the US salary it's Canadian salary is 90,000. So probably US 70 plus qualifies. That's how you qualify for the program. Everyone who comes to us wants to know that first. Then the next step basically is you're going to need your employer buy-in. So what we always recommend is book a call with the Syndesis team, bring your manager along. So then our team just walks through and says, look, here's how it works. Here's the timeline. There's a question we always ask the US employer, and this is the toughest one. It's one that will provoke surprise, I think, 99% of your listeners. It's the call where one of our team asks, what's your placement budget and plan when this amazing worker cannot stay and their OPT expires? The US company knows the lottery. Your US employer understands the lottery. They know how unfair it is. They've had to deal with this in the past. They know what happens when there's an expiring OPT. All this is known to them. What they would have done is very small percentage. They'll say, look, if you go back to India, Pakistan, China, we'll keep you employed. Same salary. You'll just work, your own hours. Very small percentage of people get lucky that way. Well,
Hmm.
most people are told your job will have to go away. We need someone in time zone. We're going to have to rehire someone. And this is the shocking question that your listeners have probably not heard, but I've heard these when I used to take these calls and my team hears them. We ask the US company, what's the budget for replacing this worker? They'll be like, I've heard 15 to 20,000 for the recruiter minimum, maybe 30 or 40,000. We're going to budget several months to go look for a search. And then we ask them, how much do you expect this to cost you? And the HR manager, the engineering manager will say, oh, this could be 40, 50,000, could be more. You hear these big numbers being thrown out. And the worker's like, whoa, no one shares that with you. That your US company values you in the work that you do so much. That's what they're facing.
Wow. So, Marc, tell us a story. You've worked a lot of clients. This isn't just theory. You've done this a ton. What's a success story? What does this look like on a typical journey that you can paint the picture so someone could say, oh yeah, I could do that?
Can share. One comes to mind immediately, an Indian national. She was working in New Jersey, and I can also cover the process and the qualifying, the time frame. All this came through in the call, like the example I just gave you. So first we had a quick call with her, and I said, the first question we always ask when reaches out, we're like, how did you find us? And this was unusual. She's like, well, my boyfriend got moved to Toronto 6 months earlier, and I was hoping I would win the H-1B lottery, but no, OPT's expiring. You moved him. And I'm like, I did just talk to him, and he set up in Toronto. And she's like, we met in university here in the US. And now I'm next. And I heard about you guys. So can you talk to my employer? And I said, yeah, absolutely. So she's like, let me and then so the employer's 2 days later, the employer's in the call. In this case, it was a CFO. The CFO took over this process. And he's like, walk me through he's like, Marc, how does this work? And I took this call and I said, here's a qualification. She is UX UI designer, does have a salary that fits. She said the work can be done remotely. He's like, yeah, it can be done remotely. I'm like, all this works. And you guys are in East Coast and Toronto works for time zone. He's like, absolutely, all this works. And so then he's like, okay, it qualifies. I'm like, yeah. He's like, how long? And I'm like, from when you sign this Indices contract. So the CFO, I said, you'll sign this Indices contract because we're getting into business together. I said, I always say this clearly, we don't charge the worker anything. There is no fee for them ever. I said, we will take care of this whole process. The immigration lawyer is included in the bill. All these pieces are taken care of. He's like, okay, so you could do it in 2 months. I'm like, 2 to 3 months. Robert, the correction now is that was a few years back. Say 3 to 4 months, start to finish after the Indices contract signed. Okay, he's like, that's fine. He's like, that's going to fit within the 6 months. I think our OPT is expiring. If this can be done in 4 months, great. If you can do it in 2 or 3, even better. That process went. There was a point where, and this is something that I learned. This was, I asked the question. I'm like, what's the budget? And the CFO is like, let me call the head of HR. I don't have that number in front of me. So I think he had like an intercom in his desk, old style. I hear him hit a button. And he's like, Meredith, can you tell me what the, for may try, we set aside a budget if she had to leave and we had to replace her. And then you hear the HR person like, well, Bill, there's a minimum of 15,000 for the recruiter. And she's like, that's the low cost, but that's what we've set aside in the budget. And then he's like, thank you. When he comes back, he's like, well, if that sounds like, he's like, that's what your fee is. I'm like, yeah. He's like, I'm a CFO. I have to negotiate with you. I'm like, of course you do. So we negotiated. And then at the end of the call, he's like, I'm actually saving you money. He's like, you're actually saving us money. He's like, let's go do this. He was very like cut and dry as a CFO. But to me, it's like, I could see the calculations. Usually we work with HR execs and they're like, no, this person means a lot. They're part of our team. We fought for them. We've spent tens of thousands in US immigration fees. Mm-hmm. This guy was a little more cut to the chase, but he also said, look, we want to help. We want to help her. She's invaluable to the team. But he also was like, there's no extra cost here. We already budgeted for this. Let's go. It's that fast. It's that clean in these conversations.
I love it. So yeah, we've got a link there for you guys to connect with Syndesis or Mark. I set up kind of just an intro exploratory call to how they can help you guys out and see if this is a fit for you, your H-1B pivot. And if, you're facing not a way to stay in America, but want to stay in North America. And then what's great with this Syndesis route is once you're there working and, up in Canada, it helps speed up the PR process, which speeds up the passport process, working towards citizenship, but then also the TN visa in the future to where you can, it's probably one of the quickest ways where you can come back and work in America as well. Correct, Mark?
Yes. And I also, unfortunately, have to share the update on Canadian immigration. It is not as easy as it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Last summer, it got tougher. In previous years, I think we've moved over 100 people to Canada. I've met many people once they've crossed, they would share stories. The one I just shared with you, the woman who moved, she got Canadian PR in about 14 months.
Wow.
Right after she got it, weeks later, she gets laid off from a remote job. But she's like, but I've got Canadian PR. I don't have to go. I'm like, no, go. You can now look for a job as a Canadian. And she replaced that job and she was fine.
Wow.
Canadian permanent residence is much harder now, much, much, much harder. So the work visa is a little more challenging to get, but it can still work. But what we encourage people to do is, in the past, it would be, Canada's a big country, go wherever you want. So some people would say, well, the taxes in Alberta are lower, I'm going to go there. And other people are like, Vancouver looks pretty, I'm going to go there. And one person bizarrely went to Winnipeg. I don't quite understand that. What we now tell people is, it's a very cold place. It's colder than Minneapolis. So what we tell people now is, look, you're going to want to go to Ontario. You don't have to go to Toronto. There's a few people we talk with who said, Mark, I went to Ottawa. Prices are 1/3 less to buy a house. I heard multiple people say that. They're like, I'm like, 1 million+ people in Ottawa. It's a big city. You can be happy there. But what we now recommend is go to Ontario, because Syndesis we are an established corporation in Ontario for 11 years. There are provincial nominee programs we can work with that can get you to PR. So Canadian PR, a lot of your listeners will be like, wait a minute, I heard it's very difficult. It is. It's still possible. You just have to have a good immigration strategy with your Canadian immigration lawyer. We've got access to good ones. But the unique thing is, once you get to Canada, you start exploring options on your own. But yeah, we recommend you go to Ontario.
Awesome. Friends, I hope that's encouraging you. And to say thanks for hanging out with us today. We've got a giveaway. We're going to give away a copy of our good friend Sundaria's book. She's been on our channel, author of Admitted and Unshackled. This is the guidebook. It breaks down a lot of these Plan B alternatives we talked about. O1 visa, EB1 visa, just a lot of great, how to plan ahead for your immigration journey. So to qualify, in the comments, put the phrase #VisaHelp if you want to qualify to win a free copy of this book. So right now, I'm going to pull up our giveaway screen, but please put that #VisaHelp in the chat to qualify to win this book. So, all right, let me pull this up here. There we go. Mital's got it. So yeah, #VisaHelp. So that's what you guys want to put in there. We'll give you guys a second to do that. If you haven't read this book, it is so good. Highly recommend it. I couldn't put it down. Any current incoming student needs to pick this up. If you're not sure about your visa future, or such a helpful tool, can save you a lot of money. To preemptively, before you decide if you want to work with an immigration attorney. So do yourself a favor and get educated. So yeah, put #VisaHelp there. We'll give you guys a few more seconds to put that in the chat to qualify to win this book. Mark, are you familiar with this book?
Yes, and I've met Sundaria. Super smart. I think she is. I like what she's done for the immigrant community. It was a big service to everyone by writing that book. But like you said, it's just, you look at the options and you're like, okay, there's a lot of great information there.
Yeah. All right. 10 more seconds. go ahead and put hashtag visa help in the chat, and we'll get you guys qualified. Only need to put it one time. It's only going to count it one time in the chat. All right, and we're going for a copy of Unshackled. Okay, here we go. Let's see who's going to be our lucky winner. All right, congratulations, Jemima Zita Apia. I do not know how to pronounce your name, but congratulations. Please connect and share your contact information, and we will send you a free copy of that book. Thank you for participating. All right. And now, friends, we're going to get to the live Q&A part, our last little bit of our time here. I've seen a few great questions. Make sure you guys give Jemima some love and some congratulations there in the chat. But now is the chance to put your questions in the chat. So questions about visas, immigration, jobs, USA, Canada, all that stuff. Mark and I will help answer. So yes, go ahead and start putting those. If you've got a burning question, we'll definitely prioritize the super chats, but we'll try to get to as many of these as we can. So, all right. We got Tyler Durden there from Fight Club. He's asking, is OPT going to be eliminated? I know there's been rumors and news headlines talking about that. Mark, have you heard any more updates on that?
I anxiously watch, as everyone else is, who drives H-1B policy. You hear some things from Elon Musk and some of the tech people around Trump who are saying this is H-1B program should be made easier. And then you have the other side of the Republican Party is not favorable towards immigration. What I don't see is any kind of consensus coming out of Washington of here's what we're going to do. And immigration policy is set by Congress, not the president. This is a different type of administration. I see no clarity. Over to you, Robert. Have you heard any? I've heard nothing. I just hear, oh, it's wait and see. How about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the beginning of the year, around when Trump was coming into office, I saw some headlines about that, rumors. Again, it's just rumors. This is a major policy change. So it's not just something with a wave of a wand, but it's going to take government intervention. I personally don't think OPT is going to be eliminated. It's actually still a pretty new program. It hasn't been around very long. People don't realize that. It's not a very old program. I think Sundaria talks about it when it started in her book. But it's so valuable to America. So many American companies use OPT for employees. CPT internships become OPT jobs, which become H-1B employees. It's the natural progression. So many companies in America can't operate without OPT and H-1B. They need foreign talent, especially our tech-heavy economy with this AI future. So if I was a betting man, I would bet it's not going away. Could there be restrictions, edits? Possibly. I really doubt it's going to go away. That would be crazy. And there would be a lot of backlash because so much of our economy depends on it. Yes. Universities depend on it as well. It's an attractional part to come study in America on that F1 visa. So again, universities would revolt, companies would revolt, Elon Musk would revolt. And so, yeah.
Agree.
Until it's an act of Congress that's been approved and voted on and signed, I don't think we have to worry about that. But so make sure we're distinguishing rumors versus facts. So, yeah. All right. Rishi Raj, good to see you, buddy. Another friend who studied here in Texas. What counts as an original contribution on the O1 visa? Are you familiar with that at all, Mark?
That the original contribution? No, that is new to me.
Okay. So yeah, O1 has 8 pillars, 8 criteria. I think you only have to qualify for 3 or 4 of them. One of them is an original contribution. I think that is like in a possibly like a scholarly publication. So some sort of paper that has been published or presented. Again, Sandaria's book breaks that down. I've done some videos interviewing people on who have achieved their O1 visa that talk about that. So some of our videos might have more details on that. And then again, I think just online, if you go to the USCIS webpage about it, it has details on what are those 8 pillars of criteria and explains those. And an immigration attorney can also help. So I'm not an expert on this, but I think it is either authoring or co-authoring some sort of published or presented scholarly paper as one of the potential options to qualify for an O1. But it's not like a PhD, Albert Einstein kind of paper. It's something that's, is technical that you can present at a conference, something very manageable, that don't be scared off by that criteria. So yeah, hope that helps, Rishiraj. All right. Other questions, friends? I'm going to try and scroll back to some of those previous ones, but yeah, please let us know what questions you guys are having here. Okay. Another great question. Kinwa is asking, do you think it will get easier once Trump is no longer in office? I'm guessing maybe about immigration, H-1B. Mark, what are your thoughts on this?
Almost 4 years away. I think there's the multiple lotteries will happen by then. It's so far away, all speculation. Yeah, if it was 1 year away and you're like, oh my gosh, I can, I've got 1 or 2 more chances at the lottery, I'm going to fall into some new administration. If a Democrat, if you looked at what happened with Biden, yes, immigration got easier, but again, at 4 years or 3 years and 8 months, it's a long time to wait.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but who knows? Again, obviously, this is Trump's last term. A lot can happen in 4 years. Doesn't mean that another Republican or JD Vance doesn't come in after him.
Yes.
It doesn't always just flip flop every term, every
You're
administration.
exactly right.
That's what has been recent history, but it could be JD Vance, could be another Republican. So we don't know the future. Don't hold your breath, hold your fingers. What all we say is, don't make decisions based on fears. Make decisions based on facts. And right now, this is what we're working with. So this is what you have to make decisions based on. Don't hypothesize thinking, hey, if I just wait a few years, things will be better. It might not be like that. We don't want to give any false promises. So, all right. Rishi Raj has given us a follow-up question here, 2-parter. What's the time frame to get a Canadian work visa, Canadian PR? So what's the time frame for those, Mark? And then do they have to be in Canada to apply for PR?
So take these one at a time. To get the Canadian work visa, the work visa that Syndesis works with is from Global Talent Stream. It is for STEM or tech workers or people who are in the tech field. What we're seeing is from start to finish approval times, 3 to 4 months, no guarantee. There's a couple worst cases. It could go to 6 months, but usually we're seeing a 3 to 4 month window. Again, immigration systems, you cannot say, well, you said it would be this long. There are people involved. There's Canadian politics involved. PR is much more complicated. What Canada used to do is once you got the work visa and you got in, there were points associated with your work visa. They've taken those away. So now, if we were having this conversation a year ago, I would have described a process that was, what I saw everyone getting it is in 14 to 24 months. Doesn't work that way anymore. Now that you're in Canada, the work visa is a 2 or 3 year work visa. It's renewable. You're now facing a longer PR route. If you are in Canada on the work visa, then you are trying to get depending on the province you're in. That's why I mentioned go to Ontario. There's some better approaches there. PR now can take 2 to 3 years. It is a longer process. The follow-up question, do I have to be in Canada to apply for PR? Not a Canadian immigration lawyer, so I don't want to say all options. I'm going to give you the opinion of what I'm used to. The people we move to Canada on work permits are showing up in Canada with global talent stream work visa. And then because they're in Canada living, then they're applying to get PR. That is the way that we know. Separately, you could say, hey, I already read about express entry. I'm doing that. I want to get into Canada that way. No job required up front. If you're going that way, you wouldn't have to be in Canada to get PR. Express entry is a program to get you in. That one's also become much, much more complicated. And again, I would always say consult a Canadian immigration lawyer, whether you have to be in to apply for permanent residence. There are also other programs. Syndesis just focuses on the global talent stream because we work with tech companies. We work with STEM workers who have tech degrees. That is where we can offer a solution.
Okay. So Mithal, she's asking, given her background in the pharmaceutical industry, what are the chances of obtaining a visa approval to relocate to Canada through Syndesis?
In that scenario, it would go back to what exactly is your role with the pharma company. If you're in the data science team, if you were in a lab, this is some of the tough ones. Sometimes people come to us, they have biotech or pharma backgrounds, but they're like, I'm working in the lab. And I'm like, if your lab could transfer, if you had equipment that could go with you and you could do it remotely from Canada, this is possible. It also goes down to what exactly is your role. So on that, the easiest thing is for Mithal, just book a call with Syndesis, and then just in the email, just explain, here's my title, here's my role, here's what I do, here's my situation, and then we can help qualify you in or out.
Great. Yeah. Sounds good. And then she asks, if I relocate to Canada, can my employer still continue submitting H-1 visa lottery petition on my behalf while I'm based there? Great follow-up question.
That is a really good question because variations of it have come up for the years. I'm going to give an opinion, and I definitely would, and I would take this to a U.S. immigration lawyer. My understanding is if you are in the U.S. now, you have a U.S. job, you apply for the H-1B lottery, the U.S. is like, you're here, here's your situation, you're applying. In the Syndesis model, you don't have a U.S. job. You have left the U.S. You have moved from the U.S. You don't pay taxes in the U.S. The people we've moved to Canada, the U.S. ceases to exist for them anymore. They now are on a Canadian work visa. They are living in Canada. They are paying taxes in Canada. They have a legal job in Canada. Nowhere is the U.S. included. What I would imagine your U.S. immigration lawyer would say is, you're not here anymore. You left, you're in some other country's immigration system. How can I dual report and try and keep you and work with you in the US when you're physically gone? I have seen people we've moved up come back to the US after 2 or 3 or 4 years. Sometimes I'll follow them and I'll see them on LinkedIn. I'm like, oh, they're in Silicon Valley now. Some people will say, look, I'm going to go to Canada for 2 or 3 years. And then if I have the opportunity, I'll come back. What Syndesis doesn't want to do is have someone be in a position where they're saying, look, I'm just gaming the system. I'll be in Canada for 6 months, but when I get the US, I'm out of here. We're looking for people who say, look, the US gave up on me. I want to live in Canada for a few years. If after 2 or 3 years, you're like, it rains too much in Vancouver, or it's too cold in Toronto, and you want to try US options, you're free to do that. What we do not and will not do is park people in Canada for the benefit of the US. The people we're talking to, we're saying, look, the US options ended. We'll get you a new life in Canada. That's our goal. Down the road, if that turns out great for you, wonderful. If in 2 or 3 years make a different decision, that's up to you. But we don't want to temporarily put you there for the benefit of the US. That is not our intent.
But it is possible to get an H-1B outside of America. There are employees, who get hired, get sponsored, and then come from outside of America and then begin their work journey in H-1B. So theoretically, it is possible. Again, you just got to make sure everything lines up, and talking to a good immigration lawyer can definitely help with that. But that's a great question and great thing to talk with your company as well. Sky is asking, I'm not super confident whether I'll qualify for an O1, but want to pursue it. and want to pursue Canadian PR temp visa as a fallback at the same time. Is it possible to do both? And is that something that could be done in 9 to 10 months? Great question.
It is, because like, as we said, the smart thing is to do multiple strategies. You can do both. One thing to emphasize here, the Canadian option and the US option, there is no conversation between US and Canadian immigration officials. None of them are concerned what the other one's doing. So if you said, look, I'm trying for the O1, the Canadian officials will have no knowledge. They might not even know what an O1 is. They would say, that's not our business. Our business is helping people who want to move to Canada and get a work visa. So you could go through the process. It does happen sometimes where someone says, look, I have to do them both in parallel. It might work out where you're like, the O1 came out. We have people say like, stop the process, Mark, the Canadian process, please stop. A miracle happened. We got something in the US. Totally understand. But the choice, at some point, if you got both, you have to make the choice of, obviously, which one should you do? Which one's the best for you and your family?
Yeah, but the earlier you get started having those conversations and talking to the right people, the better chances you have. And I love Mark's suggestion of, pursue multiple things at once. The more options you have, the better chances one of them is going to work out. So the worst thing is you have just one option, it doesn't work out, and then there's no backup plans. So, yeah. Okay. We are hitting the hour here. And so I just want to say thank you guys for tuning in, and thank you, Marc, for spending time with us. I know that H-1B season is a lot of emotions. Hopefully we gave some encouragement, some vision for some new pathways. And if you guys do have questions, especially about Canada as a pivot or backup plan, please connect with Marc and his friends at Syndesis there. We've got links for that in the chat, in the video description. We always want to help you thrive and succeed. And Marc, thanks so much for sharing your insights and options for our friends who are looking for clarity in all the confusion.
Thanks for having me on, Robert. As you said at the very beginning of your show, you said people don't know the options are out there, and that's what China Coaching is about, bringing options. I'm happy to be here to share an option where many of the people who've moved to Canada saying, I never knew this existed. I hear this from the employers. I hear this from the individuals saying, I happen to see this life-changing. That's what we're hoping happens. Someone on a last resort, we help them out. That's the whole goal here.
Yeah. So make sure to like the video, to say cheers and thanks to Marc. Give him some love there in the comments. Again, connect with us on social media, Instagram, LinkedIn. Make sure you're getting our China Coaching newsletter. We love you guys here in the China Coaching community. Thanks for tuning in for this webinar. We're hopefully going to be doing another one in a couple weeks, more for visa interviews, because I know visa interview season's coming up. So we'll see you guys later. Cheers, everybody. Have a great week.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Robert.
Bye-bye.